I'm Terry Oracle, and we're here to talk about the last soulmate. That's right, we talked about. You have three soulmates, by the way. You have a mental, you have an emotional, and you have a physical soulmate. We talked about the other two before. Now we're on to the least interesting of all of them, which is the mental soulmate. And I say least interesting because it's more like a friend relationship than a love relationship. It can work as a love relationship. There's just a lot to do. I mean, a lot to work out. One of the key points of a echoey room like we have here. No, one of the key points of a relationship is the physical attraction, right? Mental soulmate, you may not have that. You may not have the emotional stability. You may not have a lot of different things within the concept of the mental soulmate. But for now, we're going to use Annie Hall. And we're using Annie Hall as an example because there's not really a great movie to use as an example. We're just sort of putting up with Annie Hall for now. So Annie Hall represents a lot of things from the mental soulmate. Number one, it was just an awkward relationship when they kissed, when they made love, all the different things. You just felt awkward watching it. You were just like, this is sort of weird. And they acted awkward in the entire relationship, and they acted awkward throughout, the touching, throughout the emotional connections and things like that. And a lot of times with the mental soulmate, you just don't have the physical or the emotional connections there, like you would obviously with a soulmate, the physical soulmate or an emotional soulmate. So the mental soulmate is just basically a high degree of mental connection. Now, does it need to be the opposite sex, or if you're attracted to the same sex, does it need to be the same sex? No. It could be a soulmate of the opposite sex that you're attracted to. So it's one of those things to where we'll go over the positives and the negatives as well. So one of the positives is you think each other's thoughts. And what I mean by that is you look at Annie Hall, right? When they're on the same train of thought, they were really in sync. So, you complete each other's sentences type things. So you know what they're going to say and things like that. Now, I know that's not uncommon. So you'll have a relationship with somebody, but it is uncommon when you first meet. And when you first meet, you're able to complete each other's sentences right then. So it's an instant, immediate connection. There's no delay, there's no anything. It's just an instant, immediate connection. And it's important, again, to realize that the mental soulmate may not have the emotional component, may not have the physical component. You could be looking at a lack of a lot of things. And that could lead to frustration, that could lead to a bad love relationship, etc. So you're going to have to work those out independently of the mental. So you complete each other's sentences almost immediately. And that's sort of what happened with Annie Hall, right? They were both awkward. They were both thinking the same things in their head when they were talking to each other, etc. So another thing, you pick up the phone when they dial. It's one of those things where I'm about to call Fred or whatever. And Fred literally picks up the phone and calls me at that exact second. So that happens a lot. I know it happens rarely, etc. But with a mental soulmate, it happens quite a bit. And another thing is when you have a conversation or when you communicate on a mental level. Does that make sense? So an emotional soulmate, you communicate on an emotional level. And a physical soulmate, you're just, touching and things like that. But you communicate on a mental level. You talk about basic things or thoughts or things like that. You don't talk about, of course, you're going to talk about emotions, but an emotional soulmate, your main topics of conversation in an emotional soulmate are emotions. But with a mental soulmate, your conversation is all over the place. It's not restricted sort of to emotions. So it's long term, but it has an end date. That's one of the awkward things that you have with a mental soulmate is it is long term. An emotional soulmate is long term as well. Emotional is long term as well. Physical, not so much. You break up and then you come back. I mean, that could be long term technically, but you break up, you come back, you break up, you come back. Here, emotional soulmate, it is long term. And here, mental soulmate, it's long term with an end date. Every mental soulmate has an end date. They do not last forever. They just have this weird end date when you both just stop talking to each other. And it happens every time. So you have an end date. So it never really goes bad. It just vanishes. So a mental soulmate, you never really go bad because you're thinking the same things, right? Maybe you can't put up with each other, whatever like that. But I mean, you wouldn't be soulmates if that was the case, right? So a mental soulmate, it never really goes bad. It just suddenly vanishes. And all mental soulmates have an end date. And an end date is just when you stop talking. You never really have like an argument or, really frustrating things. No, it doesn't happen. You just suddenly stop talking. That's the nature of a mental soulmate. It never really goes bad. It just vanishes. Another thing, it's based upon pure luck. It's one of those things to where it appears at stable times, but it's pure luck. It's just like I just happened to run into this person randomly, right? I just randomly ran into this person. It wasn't something to where it was destiny or something like this, or you really needed the mental soulmate. You're in a mental position to where you really need someone to talk to. That really doesn't happen. That happens with other soulmates, but not this one. It appears at stable times when your life is perfectly stable and everything is going okay. You just pop out a mental soulmate. It's really odd. But it appears at stable times. Others do not appear at stable times. They appear at weird times. So an emotional soulmate, for example, always appears at weird times. Mental appears at stable times. All right, so that's the positives of the mental soulmate based upon Annie Hall. So negative, it's awkward from start to end. It's just awkward. You look at Annie Hall, it was awkward when they met. It was awkward when they kissed and made love, etc. It was awkward from start to end. There really was no end to the awkwardness. So this is the same with a mental soulmate. There's really no end to the awkwardness. And it's just from start to end, that's just how it is. But you're okay with that. You're okay with that. You sort of understand that. But if other people are looking at you, they're like, man, this is kind of awkward and weird. So, but yeah, it is awkward and weird. It's a mental soulmate. So be prepared. Be prepared for awkward from start to end. Don't expect something like a physical soulmate. A physical soulmate is just like a massive physical attraction. You're not going to have that. It's just awkward. So you have similar mental hangups. You like my M there? So you have similar mental hangups, meaning some people are OCD. Some people may be narcissistic. Your mental soulmate is going to represent a lot of your bad habits, a lot of your bad things. So your mental soulmate is probably not going to be drastically different mentally than you. So a lot of people have OCD. A lot of people are really picky about stuff. Mental soulmate would be as well, right? And you have that with, with when Harry met Sally, right? They were emotional soulmates, but she was really awkward. She had an awkward way of ordering things, etc. Sort of this mental OCD that she had that you really can't get rid of, right? So awkward from start to end, and you have similar mental hang-up. So if you do have OCD, if you do have, I don't know, schizophrenia, whatever, your mental soulmate is going to have a lot of the same traits, and that's good and bad, right? I mean, 2 OCD, double OCD may be bad. That's obsessive compulsive disorder, in case you didn't know what OCD was, by the way. So the next negative is the vanishing. Again, it has an end date. And the vanishing is when you just forget to call them. And the next day you forgot to call them as well. And then it's been a week, and now it's sort of awkward to call them. And now it's been a month. And then you're like, I really need to call them. And now it's been 6 months. And now it's really awkward to call them. You were awkward to begin with, but now it's really awkward to call them. You just got busy, and you will not run into them. It's one of those things to where you just will not just randomly run into them again. You're done. So the world, the universe will ensure that you do not run into this person. Unless obviously you hunt them down or something. Hey, showed up at your work, hello. So, don't do that. But anyway, you won't just randomly run into them. It's the vanishing. And you never really had an end. So if you do run into them, you're like, hey, what's going on? But you both vanish. You both stop talking, just happens. Again, it may not be romantically compatible. A lot of times, if you don't have that physical attraction, a lot of people need that physical attraction. They're like, I need that spark, I need that snap. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be happy as in a love relationship with that person. So it may not be there. You may not be romantically compatible. So you have to sort of deal with that in your own way. Another thing I found common with mental soulmates is they make fun of people. You'll see that as listed as a negative. It's one of those things to where you have somebody that's really funny and he sort of points out this dude's shoes is really weird, or the lady's haircut is really odd, or what's up with that hat, or that car looks terrible. I've noticed that they just make fun of people. And one will be the primary make funner, is it a word? A make fun person. And the other one will be the person that laughs and agrees and then points out more things that are awkward and things like that. I've noticed that they make fun of people. So not all the time, obviously, but it's a frequent thing that I've seen that they point out things wrong with other people. Not that that's good. It is listed as a negative. That's never good. But I've seen that multiple times. Anyway, so that is the mental soulmate. Let me know if you have any questions about the mental soulmate. It may be the same-sex person. It's most likely going to be a friend unless you can work out the physical and the emotional. But a lot of people, you need that physical spark or it just doesn't work. And that's why a traditional soulmate, as you see in the media, is a physical soulmate. So just keep that in mind. If you have a soulmate where you're just madly in love with each other instantly and you're all over each other, you're holding hands all constantly, that's probably a physical. Mental soulmate, not so much. But mental soulmates do exist. They're the least interesting of the three, but they are there. And I want to point them out in case you have a mental soulmate. Let me know if you do, or if you currently have one, or if you had one in the past. I'd love to hear from you. I'm Tarot Oracle, and this is the conclusion of the triple soulmate theory. Let me know if you have enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video. Please hit like and subscribe.